All right, sweet. All right, guys. Hey, we're back here on the restaurant with Gary Hashman and myself, Butch Hiles. But today we have Jake Shields because we're going to have a good seminar coming up on January 16th, I believe is the date. Does that sound familiar, Gary? You're the smart
That's
one.
right. That's right.
All
I
right.
get all my dates all mixed up. I'm doing a few, but I think it's that weekend. I know.
Yeah. So I knew not to ask you because you probably got too much stuff coming on, coming up. But so anyway, one real cool thing that I was going to ask you about what I was thinking about earlier. So Gary Hashman, the guy that you just met, got his black belt this weekend.
Awesome.
So
Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So when did you get your black belt, Jake? I'm sure it was a long time ago now.
Yeah, like I think it was 2008 because the ADCC, I went to the first one in 2005. I was still a purple belt when I went there. So I think I got it in like 2007, 2008. I should know this, but yeah, it's been a while. My focus was so on MMA at the time, I didn't really care too much about belts, which obviously is great having a black belt now. But at the time, it was just, fights was my main focus, and I was doing grappling on the side. So
now, did you get were you like one of those typical things where you got the belt awarded to you like on a podium stand or after a fight or something like that? Or?
No, got it just at the gym randomly. I forget exactly why or when. I think maybe won some big fight, and then Caesar came in and gave me the belt. And Caesar Gracie doesn't give them easy. I think he gave two before me. I think like Nick Diaz and David Terrell. So,
which is all awesome. And I thought I saw a picture just the other day. Was Nate getting like a stripe or something from maybe his third degree from? But yeah, Henzo doing it, or he just happened to be there in the picture.
I think Henzo was just there because Henzo and Caesar are cousins, obviously. So I think Henzo's happened to be in town, so Caesar did it while Henzo was in town.
Yeah. So now, did you? Sorry to keep asking a question, but did you start with Caesar Gracie, or is that?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't start there, but I started a little bit before that with So I was wrestling, and then I met Chuck Liddell. So Chuck's not really a jiu-jitsu guy, obviously, but I stared kind of catch wrestling, submission wrestling with him first, and then I transferred over to Caesar Gracie and started training under him.
Now, didn't like Gilbert Melendez there when you were all there? I mean, that's a hell of a team.
Yeah, I brought Gilbert Melendez in. I wrestled with him in college, and he was my buddy, and I wanted someone to drive over. We'd have to drive like 45 minutes. So I made him come in and was actually coaching him. He was my first student. Him,
really?
And I brought him because I would go in and spar Nick, and because I brought him in one day, Nick's like, well, my brother could spar this kid, so he went and brought his brother in the next day, and that's kind of the origins.
Yeah, but if you think about it, I mean, that's a hell of a team, like just randomly, right? Like to get together.
Crazy,
and then,
yeah,
and then you guys.
It's almost always like it's almost always super teams where everyone kind of moves there, and we all just kind of randomly met up, and we're tough. And we had some other really good guys there as well. This guy David Terrell, he fought for the UFC title at 85. Yeah. We had Gil Castillo fought title in the 70s. So we had some other there's a bunch of random tough guys walked in that room, and we all pushed each other and did well.
Now, is David Terrell in Texas, or no? Is he still in California?
No, he's in Santa Rosa, California, which is about an hour above San Francisco. He's got a bunch of savages he's training. He's a phenomenal instructor, and he's one of the greatest of all times that wasn't a huge name. The guy was just a phenom, but I think he just was never really big into competing and preferred more teaching and training. So after he lost the UFC title, he didn't really want to fight after that. I think he did one more and won it, and then kind of semi-retired after that.
Nah, and all those guys, even Gil Castillo, all those guys, I remember. Like we've talked about it on here a couple of times. I used to get every like VHS tape known to man if it involved fighting. It didn't matter, those little gladiator fighting championships.
We used to have to go to the video store and try to find them, or find them online, or.
So it's crazy, and all those guys, they're all somewhere now, whether it's reffing or teaching seminars or doing just whatever, like that. All that crew of back in the day, which is pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So sports has changed so much. Like I said, if you've been watching since then, it's just massively changed, and mostly for the better. Obviously, not everything's not always for the better, but the fact there's real money in it, a lot of eyes. So overall, it's definitely a positive thing. The growth we've gone through.
One last thing before I let Gary, because I'm hogging all the time.
Yeah. No worries. I'm not like in a super rush. So
yeah, are you still training? Like obviously you were training at Henzo's there for a while too, and a lot of people knew about that because everybody was watching the Danaher Death Squad at the time. Are you still doing stuff like that, or not really? You're back
well, I'm not living where those guys are because I was living in New York for a while, but I still go and visit them. I was actually just out in Austin a couple of weeks ago, and it's John's such a phenomenal coach because I hadn't seen him around a year because of COVID, everything crossing over. They were in Puerto Rico, and it's just he's doing things just completely different. I mean, doing some things the same, obviously, but he's just constantly changing and upgrading his techniques. So like the way he shows something one time might be different a year later. And that's a sign of a great coach who's not rigid, stuck on, doing things exactly the same. He's always adapting his coaching and learning new things and trying to innovate the sport.
To get your guys, I mean, it still amazes me. Like, I'm just thinking to get your attention, like you and Gordon Ryan and GSP and all that, like for a coach to get your attention to where you're like, that guy's amazing. And all the, like I said, you guys are all big names. It's like mind blowing, right? Like
it really is. It's so hard to coach guys at our level. Like you said, GSP, Gordon, it's so hard to get to coach guys like that. Usually when we meet up, we just kind of go in a room and guys just kind of spar and train because we've already, we think we've already not think it all. It's just so hard teaching us new stuff. And that's, most black belts know black belts usually meet to train. They just kind of train and don't do that much technique. So a guy like John is just so innovative, pushing the boundaries. I remember in New York, I would look around, it would be like 30, 40 black belts all trying to learn. It's so rare you see that. It's and it's cool. And like you said, I just, I fly out to see him. I saw yesterday, George St. Pierre flew out from all the way from where the hell he's out in Canada. Where he's at? Out in Canada, train with him in Austin. So it's, the guy's definitely, you can't deny he's a good coach. Maybe a little strange in his rash guards, but he knows, as far as martial arts, he definitely knows a lot.
Yeah, he's trying to change the culture of wearing rash guard wherever you go.
That one's not going to work, but martial arts coach, but he's not getting me in a rash guard. First time I saw him, See, I didn't know he was only in rash guards, and I saw him in New York at the Whole Foods, this rash guard. I'm like, I pulled my phone and started filming, like, oh, I caught you in a rash guard. And he's looking at me like, what do you mean? I'm always in a rash guard.
So great. What, even in the cold? I mean, that's nuts, isn't it? Like,
he like sometimes they put a jacket over his rash guard, I think, but still in rash guards.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Having a guy like Danaher, it's one of those things where everybody says that once you get your black belt, that's when you begin learning. But we do kind of fall in, into a routine where we're just training and we're not learning anymore. And he is one of those guys that inspire us to say, hey, there's so much more to this than what we, and that's where I'm at now. Like, I'm a black belt. I need to keep learning, but John seems like he really motivated himself to study every position and make as much of every position as possible. And I think that's why guys are trying to chase him down.
100%. He's just, like you said, it gets hard to learn at our level because we've already seen so much. Now I always pick other people's brains. I don't have a big ego, so maybe have an ego in some ways, but not in that. If I see someone at the gym, even if I can beat them, if I see them doing a move that's like working a lot, I'll try to figure out what they're doing. I'll ask them questions. I'm a big believer on being a black belt. I'm a big believer there's sometimes a blue belt doing something really good. They might be doing one particular move better than me, so I'll pick his brain and figure out what he's doing. So I personally go do that. And for John, I always wonder, how is he coming up with this new stuff? I think it's a combination. I think he watches a ton of tape, or I know he watches a ton of tape. And I think he kind of takes stuff that's already out there and kind of fuses it, adds his own touches, plays around, experiments by making things slightly better. And he's a fortunate, a lot of times I'm coaching, I train my rounds. He's always able to watch every round. So he sees what we're doing good and bad. So as he's coaching, you'll see him kind of adjusting, like certain moves he's throwing at us, we picking up really good, or maybe he's trying to throw something at us, we're not learning it properly, so he'll try to teach it a different way. So it was interesting watching him coach, how he kind of how he makes adjustments and all that. I think training with him, I think that helped make me a better coach as well.
Can you, like, because obviously Gary and I coach too, can you explain that a little bit? So when you say, like, you watch you guys roll, and I would like to know how you did too, like, so are you showing a move and they say, hey guys, go drill it, and you just watch, and then you're like, then you update, or
he'll have us drill the moves like typical, 3 or 4 moves, but then when we're live, he kind of watches and sees if we're picking up the stuff he's showing. And sometimes he'll throw moves away. Maybe he throws something at us, it's just not working, it's not catching, and he throws it out of the teaching. Or he might come and try to do a different variation on the same move, but slightly different variation how he teaches it, different positions, like certain moves maybe he really believes in, so he'll try teaching it several different ways. And he'll kind of recycle back to things. It's just, I said, it's not that different people teach, but I think he does a better job at like readjusting things that a lot of people don't do. Like, instead of staying rigid and like, sometimes they'll show a move, like, this is the only way to do it, rigid, keep trying showing it that way if people aren't catching, but he's able to adjust and try to like change things, make them better and improve.
So how do you like to train? So, obviously you wrestled. So wrestling and jiu-jitsu are typically a little different. And how they train. What is your, like, if you're, and it'd be different, let's say this, when you're training fighters, it's going to be a little bit different. But let's say you had a mixture of everyday people plus some, some competitors. What would your normal training session look like?
Yeah, like if I'm teaching,
Yeah.
Usually when I'm coaching, I actually have a very similar way I coach, very similar to John, which is kind of nice seeing like, oh, cool, this is working. So I usually don't do a lot of warm-ups just because I train more advanced guys. I tell guys they want to warm up, kind of do it themselves. Cause I know a lot of guys don't like warm up. So I kind of, warm-ups are great for beginners, learning how to roll and to get all the proper positions. For more advanced guys, usually skip that. So I usually just come in and go straight to technique. Usually do about 30 to 45 minutes technique. I don't think, pushing too long, guys start losing their attention span. I mean, obviously it's different at a seminar, but even seminars, I usually don't go much over like 2 hours, because you kind of see after a certain point, guys' attention starts to, you push someone for 4 hours, often the last like 2 hours, they're not really learning much. So you learn like where people start losing interest. But in my classes, usually 30 to 45 minutes technique, and then I'll go live. And I usually do, usually 3 to 4 rounds positions, and then I go open mat, where I recommend people starting on their feet. So I don't make it mandatory for starting on their feet, but for the fighters, I make it mandatory, obviously. But for regular people, I highly encourage starting from the feet. And positions are something I've always done, but actually I started believing in that more after training with John, because he would spend half his rounds like you'll start mounted or you'll start on your back, just all the most awful positions, but it's good because it teaches you great defense and also how to finish when you're in those positions. So that's something I always did but did a lot more after training with him.
I thought, now when you're doing that, like, because I also thought I heard, now you probably have days where you're doing like getting out of terrible positions too, right? Or I'll try to do that almost every day, where I'll spend, when I do positions, I say we'll do mount. So if I escape mount or the guy taps me, we switch, other guy goes down. So we'll just go back and forth. It could be 5 or 6 different times to escape mount, just going back and forth. So you're getting good finishes and you're getting good defense. So it helps your offense and your defense. Okay. How are you fitting the moves into that too? Or like, let's say that you did techniques. Are they, obviously if they're from mount, then you're going to work on mount, but if they're not, I mean, are you just still?
I mean, it depends on what the technique, because we'll all do different moves. I was just throwing those examples. So if I'm working half guard, let's say if I'm doing half guard of the day, then we'll do, maybe 2 rounds where you're starting in half guard in that position, and then another round somewhere else, and then go live. So I try to mimic as closely as I can to what I'm working. We're working back stuff. We'll start on the back.
Yeah.
So
that makes a lot of
sense. And I'll throw random stuff in there too. But I definitely try to get people to utilize right away what we're working. And teaching too, I started gearing towards, instead of just showing something randomly once and hopping over here, I'll try to stick with the same kind of idea of moves for at least a couple weeks in a row. So you're not occasionally I'll hop around, but like generally I won't go like arm bars one day, back one day, mount escapes one day. Mainly like, hey, we're going to do, all finishes from mount for the next 2 weeks, or all escape for 2 weeks. So you kind of like see the same stuff from different angles over and over. I think it's hard. I think a lot of people, they drill one thing one time and then you kind of go somewhere completely different and you're not like actually learning it and retaining it.
Yeah. And that's what, like at our gym too, we're trying to do, like, we might do a month of, like a half guard, but it'll be something, or, it could be a month.
It doesn't have to be exactly sticking with, that's kind of what I do. Like a month where you're sticking. That's what I just finished up last month, doing all half guard with my guys with different angles. That way you're doing the same position over and over. And I think it's definitely a faster way to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about this. Something I started doing was, if we had a position, so if we work from the guard, we would work the guard for a while, like, a couple weeks, 3 weeks. And then after that, we would work from being in someone's guard. And now you already know all the principles of what a good guard is. So now we're trying to break that. And now it's all about passing the guard and stopping somebody from retaining their guard. And then it just seems like it's a way of changing it up, but you're still talking about the same principles. I still know all of the things that he wants to do. He wants to keep his body elbows close to his knees if he's trying to retain guard, and I'm trying to separate his arms from his body. And so that's something that I've done, is like, we work on the bad part, if maybe you're in mount, and then we work on mounting.
I love that idea. I've done that like a little bit, but not a lot. But no, I love the idea of like, hey, let's do 2 weeks mount escapes, 2 weeks finishing from mount, or guard passing guard. Is brilliant because you're seeing both positions right away instead of waiting until way later. You see what works and you see how to get out of it. It's brilliant. And that's what's interesting versus guys. I mean, most people, I think, you're obviously a student first, and then you start teaching, and you have to kind of like try to learn. Then you have to adapt what's the best way to teaching, and it's been really fun. I've taught on and on. I've taught on and on for years and years, you know, but like not like seriously. Recently, I've been like more seriously trying to like train some good pros and make them good. So I have to really started, you know, thinking what's the best strategy, and it's been fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's something else too, is like trying to find your coaching voice, and like who is there somebody you emulate, like, and it could go back to wrestling when you were in high school or wrestling in college. Is there somebody that, hey, that's the coaching style that I liked when I was getting coached, or are you just finding your own voice and trying to do your own thing?
I think a combination of a few people, you know. I mean, I obviously you know, John Donaher learned a lot of coaching from him. I like a lot of what he does, you know, some of Caesar's style. You know, he might be a little too laid back, but it's good to be laid back some too. So I learned a lot from him, being my first jiu-jitsu coach, my first high school wrestling coach. If he's great for intensity, but that's, you know, someone just over and over just drilling these things. But that can be hard for like, it can be hard style for hobbyists, but that's like great for the pros I'm training. So hobbyist people don't want to, you know, they're not going to want to drill 100 single legs and 100 double legs, but that's great, the pros, because the pros don't want to do it, but they'll do it because they know it's important. So yeah, combination of people I learned my coaching from. Probably the biggest influence would probably be watching John, but like multiple people, my high school wrestling coach, Caesar, and a few others as well. And you got to always kind of add your own style. You don't want to clone somebody. I see people make the mistake of guys will come in, train with John 3 months, and you see them like making videos when they're like trying to be imitation John, talking like him, using Japanese words. It's like, dude, you're just being corny. You're being like wannabe John. It's different if you see Gordon Ryan, you know, or Gary Tonin, but they don't, you know, try to copy him. But if they want to speak in Japanese words, that's fine. They've been with him enough years. But you see these other guys like trying to be John. It's like, you're not John. Just be your own person as a coach.
Yeah, we were talking about that before you got on here. I was in 2004. I trained with like Elio Gracie and Henzo, or I mean Horian and Henner and all those guys. But
great guys also, yeah.
Yeah, like the way that they taught was like they used a lot of metaphors, you know, and I really liked it. It helped me remember stuff. But then I came back and I was constantly using I was trying to be them, right? Like I was like,
you realize you don't want to be them. Just you got to find your own coaching rhythm.
Yeah,
and it might work great for them, but it might not work for you. Exactly.
No, yeah, it becomes unauthentic, right? Because you can tell, like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm picking these metaphors that have nothing to do with anything, like, because that's not my thing, right? You know, and
exactly.
That's when you get comfortable, I think, is when you kind of figure out your own style. But at the same time, I think even coaching is like jujitsu, right? You're always constantly learning. Like that's why I'm asking you those questions, because I love hearing from other people and seeing what they do, and then you kind of can pick a little bit from everybody and then try to make something that everybody's really liking or you know, it's kind of picking up on.
Yeah, you know, 100%. You got, you know, you want to get feedback from your students too, see what they're liking, what they're not. You don't want to be you're obviously the coach or the boss, but you also, you know, it's important to get feedback. And I'll even some days, you know, if I have a really good wrestler hitting a sweet single, I might even be coaching, but hey, like, could you show the single you could do? There's no reason to be stuck on the ego of like, only I can show techniques to my students.
Yeah, no, but then that makes everybody else feel more free too. Like, because I've also, when I first started too, and it might be the same for you, but it was like, that's back when a lot of like traditional martial artists were teaching jujitsu, even though maybe they didn't know Brazilian jiu-jitsu because they were teaching Japanese jiu-jitsu, and that style was a little weird. Like, for example, I went to a couple of Japanese jiu-jitsu things early on in the early 90s because there's nothing around, and it's like if I was a student of this person and I offered to help somebody, like they would literally come up to you and be like, what the fuck are you showing? You're not the teacher. Are you the teacher?
Yeah.
Are you the black belt? And then you'd be like, well, no, I'm sorry, sir. And then like, yeah, they like really downed you. But that's kind of how a lot of the traditional like they're making sure, you know, there's a hierarchy.
Yeah, they wanted to have the hierarchy thing. And that's actually something from Caesar. He was always really open-minded, like early on. I think that's why he's so successful. He let us take our gis off. He would be like, he would want me to show a takedown that I was doing. He would have a sambo guy come there. He'd have him show some leg locks. And at that time, most Brazilian jiu guys were super rigid about, you know, the sensei only teaches, you got to wear your gi. It was super rigid. And Caesar was like, he was so ahead of the curve of trying to learn what we were doing, instead of being like, oh, I'm the master, you can only learn from me. He like actually let us share knowledge. I think that really helped the team explode.
Can you this is just thought, if you don't mind, like, where does Caesar fit? Like Gary and I were talking again before you came on, we were talking about reading that book Breathe by Hickson.
Yeah.
Where does Caesar fit into like the family origins and all that? Because I honestly don't know. It's a legitimate question. I know he's awesome.
I don't know the family that close, but I think it was his mom's side. I know he's cousins with Henzo, and that's like the whole line. He's really close to Henzo, but that whole like family line because I know they're cousins, but I think it was his mom's side. Because I know there was a few people that criticized, like, oh, it's not real Gracie because it was his mom. But like, yeah, but like, you know, his mom was a Gracie. He lived with her. I think he had her last name because he wasn't. I don't think he saw his dad. He was like with his mom. So
yeah, but that stuff gets squirrely, right? Didn't the people say that about Hodger at one time?
Same thing with
yeah,
Hodger.
people are just so, they want the stupidest things to nitpick over. You know how haters can be.
Well, yeah, but then Hodger started winning everything, and then he was back on the, then they quit saying that, like
yeah, right. Then also, oh, it's okay. Well, it's okay with his mom. It's like, yeah, who cares if it's his mom or his dad? Talk about a stupid thing to debate over.
Yeah, no, it's just curious because I like the history of it all, just because, without that history, like, if I didn't watch Hoist in the early UFC, then I wouldn't do jiu-jitsu. Like I wouldn't.
Yeah, man, that was so great. The Hoist came out and did that. And that's what's, like you said, you trained, with here on Hinner. You probably got to meet Hoist. That was, I met Hoist through them. He'd come in and train with us. That was like so awesome. Like, oh man, I was watching this guy when I was a teenager. Now he's in here teaching me jiu-jitsu. So
yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, same thing. And that was my early instructor all the way to purple belt was Hoist. But the same thing, I picked, like, realistically, it was probably not a good choice. Like, not because he's not awesome, but because I'm in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So that, like,
so it makes it tough.
I saw him once a year. So like, it was a tough one. Like, but realistically, also being in West Virginia, like early 90s, I had zero options really, to be honest. Like,
yeah.
There might have been other ones. I mean, it's probably not.
There wasn't too many people.
No, it was pretty rough, but yeah, like, I mean, another thing, this has zero to do with what they're talking, but I just remember too, thinking about you, is that I remember your early UFC things and Joe Rogan talking about like some matches you had with, I think Marcelo Garcia and stuff, is right? Like, and then you already kind of had a legend attached to you because of that, right? I think, right? Am I remember that correctly, Gary?
With wait, where at? I mean, I had a bunch of matches.
I think we were just talking about maybe you get just training footage. Think with you and Marcelo, maybe is that such a thing?
Yeah,
like,
I know we trained a few times. I think some of it. I know we videoed some of it. I'm not sure where he put it up. I know we trained several times. I know he's filmed several times. Yeah, Marcelo is a phenomenal guy to train with, and a super nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what but I think from what I gathered, like the legend of all that, just your training sessions were like that kind of not put you on the map because you're already on the map, but for jiu-jitsu guys were like, oh, really? Because everybody knew who Marcelo was. They're like, well, this guy's like kicking his ass, not kicking his ass, but you're hanging with him.
But doing well with him. Yeah. So
yeah. And which is awesome, right? So I mean, you've been through everything. I mean,
yeah, man, I've done the sport for a while. I think my first fight like in 99 or 2000, and just been, I've been so fortunate to be part of such a cool ride, both fighting and jiu-jitsu. And like, sounds like you were in the same era as me coming up. It's just, it was so underground back then. It was so hard to find training partners. Now, anywhere I travel, I can show up and find a jiu-jitsu gym. Remember how hard that was before? Because I'm constantly traveling around the world, even go to foreign countries and can pop in a gym. And I'm fortunate enough where usually someone knows me, so I get treated super good. I mean, you get treated good regardless, I would assume, but like, I probably get like actually good treatment. Just you have like a family all around the world where you can come in and find friends and training, and it's quite a cool community we're part of.
Yeah, I remember getting VHS tapes probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, but like they were showing you, which was stupid actually now that I think about it, but like how to make mats out of cardboard and duct tape them together so you could roll. But but people are doing that. Like some people were even fighting like in their garage, like slapping each other and having these, like they called them bruiser fights. And
yeah, well, remember how hard it was to get like instructional videos now too?
Absolutely.
You literally can buy anything and download it on your computer instantly or get it free on YouTube. I remember like I came across a Mario Sperry tape. And I was so excited. My favorite. And, like, right? I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like watching it. But now literally you can just put on YouTube and get it for free, or you can go to BJJ Fanatics and like buy the best any move you want, any move, any position. It's wrestling, sambo. It's amazing.
Yeah, Mario Sperry's they're VHS tapes, but they were my favorite back in the day. I think they were like World Martial Arts or something, but I remember that whoever made his tape was making the most back in the day, right? But yeah, to me, his were the best because he did some gi and he did some no gi, but he also like jiu-jitsu wise was amazing. I mean, like probably the guys now don't really remember him because I think he was like a little older by the time everything was hitting, but man, he was.
Yeah, he kind of missed it barely, but yeah, he was phenomenal. I remember those. Yeah, those old tapes were great. I'm not a great learner through tapes. I remember getting some of those, and that's the one thing you get, and you watch it, you learn techniques. It's just he was a phenomenal instructor and actually got a chance. He's another guy I got a chance to meet and train with. So it's so cool, you know, having watched all these guys looking up to him and getting a chance to, you know, be the peer of so many great guys.
So was he?
Well, I was going to say,
well,
okay,
let me ask one last quick. Was he doing the super, when you were a purple belt in ADCC, who was doing like the super fights, or who was the?
Damn, who was? Good question. I should know this, but it's not coming off the top of my head.
I'm gonna guess, if you think you got your black belt in 2008, so that would have been like 2004 or 5 or like 3, you know, somewhere in that region.
I was ADCC 2005. I don't know when Sperry won. It might have been around then.
Yeah, because that would have been like he was going like Mark Kerr, right? Or,
yeah, because Kerr was there. I'm trying to think of who was, because the year I did ADCC, or the first year I did it, was it was the first time it was in LA or Long Beach, wherever it was at.
Yeah, which is awesome too, because
yeah,
ironic, I think in the 90s when that first one came out, when it was in Abu Dhabi, like they were begging for people. Like there was some pretty sorry people on that. And I say that because like I think I was invited, they were like begging for people. Like it's not what it is now. Like you know,
there's like 100 people at some of the trials. There's a couple of trials, like 100 people showing up at a weight. It's crazy. And then there's a couple of different trials, so it's like it's not easy to get in anymore.
No, it's freaking crazy now. Like, and like the one that Tom DeBlas just threw, and the ones that they're throwing in California now are like insane with the viewership and everything is insane.
Yeah, I think the next ACC is gonna be in Vegas, and I think it's like they'll probably sell out like the whole arena. So it's it's just great seeing the growth of the sport. Especially, I mean, MMA, there was always a little money. Now you need a multimillionaire, but you're starting to see a few guys with jiu-jitsu making good livings now, and that's that was never really an option. The only option during our era was, you know, a school, but now you got Gordon Ryan's a millionaire, probably a multimillionaire off DVDs. Like, I mean, how cool is that? We never would have thought of that like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that was possible.
That BJJ Fanatics thing has done a great job, which I looked you up today to do, because since you obviously come for a seminar, I was going to buy some tips, but you need to put some more on there. Not that the 2 weren't great.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I thought you would have a bunch more, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to do more. I've just been like so busy this last year. So I did those. They filmed those like 7-8 months ago. And that was kind of the learning experience, seeing how it's filmed. So now I got it kind of mapped out a little better. I think I'll probably do 2 more in the next couple months. I think, you know, and then maybe 2 more after that. I don't want to do too many. I want to focus on things, areas where I'm really good, you know, a subject, and cover it properly. Don't want to like hop around on stuff where I'm just like, okay, I prefer teaching stuff that I understand really well.
It makes
if I'm selling it, at least.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, Gary, sorry, I keep.
Oh no, that's okay. I was so I'm kind of I really like the history behind people, and kind of like I want to hear the Jake Shields autobiography, and just kind of like talk about what, because obviously you've been grappling basically your whole life, and I know I did, you know, I know that you have some brothers, and I think you were homeschooled.
Yeah, through till 7th grade.
Okay, and then you. When you were homeschooled, were you wrestling at that time?
Yeah, we were wrestling. So my dad that's what brought me to wrestling, because we were like isolated in the middle of nowhere, and he didn't want me, you know, being antisocial. So I was around my brothers and stuff, of course, and some people and the neighbors, but he wanted me to be around a lot of people, which I think is a smart thing.
Okay. And so wrestling, and obviously you've done really good. You're a junior college wrestler, right?
Yeah, I was okay. Like early on, I wasn't great. I was like, okay. I think I started getting good in high school, because, you know, I didn't really have much, you know, too much coaching back then. So I was like, we were okay. We would just scrap. And in high school, I started getting pretty good. So by the end of high school, we were from one of those like small schools where the coach was like tough and would push us, but they weren't like the next level advanced to like some of the stuff these like big schools are doing. But they, you know, but they had good understandings of the basic and getting us in shape. So I started getting good by the end, and then, you know, went and wrestled junior college for a couple of years.
Yeah. The whole thing is like, if you just didn't shoot enough double legs. That's what it was.
Yeah, just shoot. No, actually, for high school, the coach was good. It was just a really small town. So they hadn't really, when I was there, I think they got a lot more confidence after I went there and went to state, and they started building a ton of guys going to state and placing. But when I was there, they never had anyone place yet. So it was just a matter of them trying to build. They don't think they believed themselves enough to realize they could be that good of a coach, because it's such a small little town. But they ended up being a really good school for a while.
Was Gilbert on that team too? Like
no, Gilbert was from Santa Ana, so he's a totally different part of California. So I think he did pretty well. I think he might have placed in the state. I'm not sure if he placed in the state or not. California is tough too, because it's it's the only, or one of the only, I think it might be the only state that doesn't do sections. So there's only one state champ in California. And most schools, they have like 4 or 5 state champs, which I think is stupid. But California is also the biggest school. So it has the most schools. So there's so many people you're competing under. So it's, so just making it to state, it would be, if you go into state in California, would be placing in most places. Then so after winning sections would be like winning state in most states. And so even going to state's pretty tough in California.
And so you're wrestling in high school, you go to college, you're wrestling in college. How do you find jiu-jitsu? Like, what is the catalyst that set you off for that?
Oh man, my wrestling coach and the assistant coach in college, because the head coach is more of a football guy, but he was smart enough to know they didn't know wrestling. He just had the job. So luckily he was an intelligent guy and didn't try running the class himself. So he would hire a guy from Cal Poly, and that guy was good friends with Chuck Liddell. And I seen Chuck Liddell, he had his, Liddell Hawk, the Kempo, and I'm thinking, this guy's a cheese ball. This guy's I'll beat this guy up. So I'm telling my coach, this guy's tough. He had a couple of UFC fights, but wasn't really that big yet. So I went in to try to beat Chuck up and just beat the shit out of me. So after that, I was like, oh man, I want to start training with Chuck every day from there. And he wasn't like, he actually has decent jiu-jitsu. People don't realize that Chuck has a pretty solid jiu-jitsu. I think the few times when he's been taken down, he's already been kind of fatigued, so it hasn't looked as good, but he's got pretty solid jiu-jitsu. So started, a little more of a catch wrestling style, but started training with him and just fell in love right away.
I don't think people like underestimate his wrestling too, because it's anti-wrestling, right? He just doesn't
exactly
take it down, right?
He was mostly sprawling ball, but yeah, he was a good wrestler, man. He was, and his peak, he was good, maybe to the end of his career, maybe he took a couple extra fights, but man, his career, I mean, I was training with him right through his peak, and he was tough. He was hard to take down, hard to pass his guard, hard to submit, got up well, and obviously hit like a truck. Remember the first time sparring him, he was a nice guy, luckily, so he wasn't trying to knock me out, but I was kind of a punk, so he was giving me some hard body shots, gave me a couple of liver shots, and I'm just like, I don't know if you guys ever boxed and hitting the liver, but it just it seizes your body, hits you, and you're just like, yeah, it's not fun.
But you didn't take one of those wicked overhand rights to the face ever.
I mean, he hit me with a few of them, but he didn't hit me. He wasn't trying to knock me out. He was way bigger than me. He, walks around like 225, and I was walking around like, 185. So luckily he's not he would hit me a few, but he's not like trying to knock people out in training. And if you piss him off, he might, but he's definitely a nice guy.
So how long were you training with Chuck before you took your first fight?
About 3 weeks.
So you just jumped in the deep end.
Yeah, like a little too soon probably. I was at a fight watching, and someone didn't show up. There's like a no-show. Like, does anyone want to fight? The wild West days, and I was just like, sure. So I stepped up, geared up. Won the first fight, and then I think I fought again. Like a month later. Ended up losing that one because I just I fought like a guy was a good wrestler, and I just didn't know enough to get off the ground. And then I think we were like 2-2 my first 4 fights, and then I started taking it more serious and started going on win streaks.
It's funny you say that. I call those the Screamin' Willie days because there was a bar in Columbus called Screamin' Willie's, and occasionally they would have fights in there, and it was the same thing. Like, hey, we need 3 guys to fight, and it would be like bald head guy with tattoos, bald head guy with tattoos, and then like weird looking guy who doesn't care about anything. And those were the guys who ended up fighting that night. Yeah,
it was fun, the good and the bad. It was definitely a little bit crazy, but there was some of that. And then there was some more serious shows that time, but there was some where you go out there and pretty much just take anyone. Like I said, the first one, I don't think it's even on my record because it was a win. So unfortunately it's not, but that one I don't think got recorded because it was just some like random show in the middle of nowhere. But it was definitely takes balls. I remember once I said, I'm sitting there putting the gloves on. I'm like, wait a second, do I really want to do this? And they go, well, I guess it's too late to back out now.
Yeah. Now, were you ever on those gladiator fighting shows in California or no? Or
yeah, I did a few of those, 3 or 4 of those maybe.
Yeah. But I mean, people, and that was like, did the same guy, I can't remember his name, but the same guy that ran King of the Cage, didn't he run that too? Like,
they were involved. It was there was the one guy ran it with him, the other guy I think split off and started running it, but they still worked together. So yeah, it was King of the Cage. King of the Cage was big for a second. They were like, one of the main competitions, UFC and Pride. But I think just the guy was, stayed on the cheap side, so the show never really took off because he didn't want to pay anyone. But it was a good show for a second.
No, 100%. Yeah, because we had fighters, and I was always really proud that when they were in King of the Cage, because I was like, well, at least it's the number 2 in the U.S.
Yeah, it was the number 2 show in the U.S. for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like you said, it was Pride, UFC, and King of the Cage, and people. What was that guy? Terry Callahan, was that his name? Or
Terry
that
Treblecock, I think it was.
Oh, yes, yeah. But yeah, and they were in Gary and I, like one of our last podcasts, we were talking about like Herb Dean fought on that, and a bunch of
other Herb Dean. Oh, did he fight? I remember repping. Did he fight? That's right, he did fight, huh? Yeah, Herb. I like Herb. I've known him for like 20-something years. Great ref.
Those are kind of the telltale signs of how long people have been really into MMA and how long they followed it. Is like, oh, do you remember the King of the Cage or the Bodog fights? Or do you remember the Super Brawls that were in Hawaii? And actually,
that was amazing. Super Brawl is amazing.
It was wonderful. But actually, my introduction to you was Shudo. And because you fought in Hawaii, I believe it was. And that was the first time I had heard about you. And man, that must have been what, 2003, maybe?
Yeah, it had to be around there. Yeah, it had to be. And that was, I fought Ray Cooper Sr. in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So,
and I think you finishing with a guillotine.
Yeah, I think a rear naked, and that's what. Then they signed me last minute. They needed someone to fight Hayato Sakurai, which you guys probably remember him, right? Really? He was like number 2 in the world when I fought him. So that's, a lot of people now don't remember him, unfortunately. But the guy was, a phenom, number 2 ranked fighter in the world, and I signed to fight him out of nowhere. So first time leaving the country, hopped on a plane heading out to I think with Nick Diaz. Neither one of us ever left the country. They put us on a plane to go to Japan to fight Sakurai. That was quite an experience.
Well, Sakurai was doing like him and all the men. I'm telling you, like people, it's sad if they don't know those guys like Bruno Sato, Yuki Nakai.
Sato's another awesome one. Takan Arigomi, even like more people know him, but a lot of guys I think don't know like the Sato and the Sakurai because they were over in Shudo instead of Pride. But that's but Pride at that time didn't have those weight classes, so it was only all the lightweights had to go fight in Shudo or pancrase.
Shudo was amazing. I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, I collected all those VHS tapes and I had all the Shudo Japans. And do you guys remember like rings too? You remember? Like I don't remember that. Yeah, Randy Couture was in there.
I forgot of it until you mentioned it, but now I do.
Yeah, I mean, but Japan had so many great just up and starters, right? And they would up and down, like pancrase. Obviously, everybody knows pancrase, but it went up and down too. Like how good it was. But there's so many good events in Japan, like over the years. Which is awesome that you were part of that with a legend too. I mean, like crazy stuff. I mean, crazy
stuff.
I
mean, that's, people ask me my favorite fight, and I don't want to say that's my favorite, but it's one of them because at the time I was completely unknown. He's number 2 ranked in the world. Unfortunately, most people don't even know who the guy is now. I've beaten like 5 UFC champs, but like fighting him at the time, that was huge to me. I was like, that showed me I really could make it. Sometimes you're wondering, is it in your head or am I really, can I really fight the best in the world? And I went and beat Hayato Sakurai in short notice. So it's like, wow, I can really do this and make this my career. And like you said, going and fighting in Japan too, that's when I was watching the Prides, the Shudos. It was such a cool experience to go out there, and it was just massive at that time. I mean, unfortunately, it's really sad that it kind of died out in Japan, but it was massive at that time.
Doesn't even make, we were just talking about it at my gym the other day, like K1. I mean, when they were fighting, those were so huge, right? Like all the, I don't know if K1 was bigger than Pride in its heyday, but I mean, it was certainly up there. And the fact that all of that pretty much disappeared and they're not hitting those numbers is insane to me. Like it's weird.
Yeah, because that was where everyone wanted to go and fight in that time period. It's like everyone wanted to fight, make it to go to Japan. It was like almost better. You mean part of you'd want to fight in the US because more people watch UFC, but like ultimately Japan was bigger market. There was more people watching, bigger live audiences, more fans. It was like, oh man, I made it to Japan. The fact that that's not there anymore is sad.
Well, and for me too, a big appeal for the Japan cards was like the audience was educated.
Yes,
you didn't hear boo, stand them up, and like they knew what was going on. There's even now, which this is 30 years later, we still have people say boo, stand them up. They don't know what's going on in the ground. It's amazing to me that 25 years ago, the Japanese fans, they knew what was going on, and they actively educated themselves on what they were watching. They weren't just a passerby in MMA.
Yeah, and they would applaud after like a technical exchange too. It's a technical jiu-jitsu exchange, and it's hard. You see that occasionally in the U.S., but not very much. And the U.S. crowd is a lot better than it was 20 years ago, but it's still not, near where it should be. But they have, people are certainly, they know like little basic submission stuff now, but But usually when they start booing right takedowns, when they're rooting for the other guy. So at least they've learned a little bit more than they have, but they still weren't not near as educated as the Japanese were.
Did you like, and this is what I was going to ask too, is did you like it when they were real quiet as opposed to like here? You know what I'm saying? Like does it matter? I mean, you're still
I think I like the loud crowd, to be honest. There's advantages to both. You know, you can hear your corner great, but honestly, it's a little bit weird. I love how respectful they are, and I'm glad I got to experience it. It was a cool experience, but ultimately, I love the loud. You know, being an American, I love the loud, rowdy crowds too. Yeah, you can't really beat it when you have like you know, like when I fought GSP, 60,000 loud fans cheering, going crazy, even though I was the bad guy, some of them booing me. Just that energy you get, you can't beat, in my opinion.
What was this came to my mind while you're talking, but what was the fight? Just because I know obviously you know those guys, but where and Gary, you probably know too, where Nick Diaz and them fought in the ring of Strikeforce or whatever that was, or
there was a couple of them. The one with Strikeforce, is that the one right after Dan Henderson I got in a brawl with Mayhem Miller? Is that the one you're talking about?
I was assuming that that's the one he's talking about.
There's also one
Mayhem kind of stormed in.
Yeah, and Mayhem jumped over the cage, and it was like I was kind of like pumped up right after the fight, and he comes and jumps in my face, and he I don't know if he pushed me or he did something that came in my face, and I just kind of I punched him, and then all hell broke loose. Because the funny thing is, Miller actually trained with Dan Henderson at that time, and Dan Henderson and his whole corner were in the cage with us. So all of us thinking, hold on, brawl is going to break out, and we all just start mopping Miller. Next thing you know, Dan, I don't think Dan guy liked him that much. They're kind of just like, we're staying out of this, and we mopped up poor Miller. Didn't realize he thought they were going to back him up.
But and I don't want to get like say anything bad, but in it, I just heard he got in trouble again the other day. He just kind of really fell off the wayside, right? And look, I love that guy, man. Like I honestly, he was entertaining, and like you said, Super Brawl. He fought in Super Brawl in Hawaii, besides the UFC, and he did a lot of awesome things in Japan. I love that guy, and I don't know. Just once it went bad, it went bad. And again, I don't want to say nothing bad. Yeah. It's because I don't think people know. Like if people hear of his name now, that's all you hear of is.
No, it's really just sad what happened to him. It's just like it's just arrest after arrest. It's like mental health issues he's got. Like I said, you know, I didn't like the guy. We had our issues, but it's gone. I hope he gets well. You know, it's just sad at this point. I never disliked him that bad. What happened to him happened to him. It's just you know, I'm surprised he hasn't done more time though, because he keeps us doing arrest after arrest.
That's a good point. That's a good
point.
Some
stuff like fairly serious. He's done some things that like aren't okay. You know, I think he needs he clearly needs mental health help. So I don't really know how he's gonna get that though. It's just he's gonna end up in jail for a long time soon though, because he had been arrested like 30 times, like multiple stalking, a couple like domestic violence, I think a standoff with the police, like arson. The list just goes on and on. It's just it's sad when you see that.
Plus, for like you said, really super talented guy, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good fight with him. I beat him, but he was tough.
That's you guys went to a decision in that, didn't you?
Yeah, we went 25 minutes. He was tough as hell. I mean, I dominated the whole fight, but the dude's tough. He just, you know, he hangs in there. He's tough. Like we didn't like each other, but I respected him. You know, so someone that's your opponent that you fought, and you know, we had a brawl, a real fight. We got in a couple battles on Twitter. We were like, I guess we were enemies, but I still respected the guy. So to see what happened to him is just sad. You know, I wish him well, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he's gonna get it together.
No, yeah, and that's what brought it up. I saw his name again the other day, and again, you know, I'm not trying to pile on a guy. It just came up randomly, but it sucks. And I also wanted to bring him up just because I think he deserves a spot in that. And even though he didn't come out victorious in a lot of these battles, but he had a great fight with GSP too, and back in the day. And you know, people probably forgot about the guy. And I think, like we said earlier, a lot of credit goes to all the people that brought up the sport, right? He's one of them. You're one of them. All those guys are one. Like, and every time I think there should be reverence every time you mention people's names that came up there. Even some of the people that you know, some people kind of laugh at now, like not really Chemo, but Chemo's trainer, what was that guy's name that punched
Joe Son?
Yeah, Joe Son. That punched me in the balls. I mean, even that guy, like, I mean, that's a legend, you know. I can remember him forever. He punched the guy in the balls like 4 or 5 times. That was amazing.
I mean, you gotta show respect to the guys that help move the sport. And Mayhem, not only was he a big fighter, he also had that MTV show Bully Beatdown, which I was actually on a few times. So that's bringing the sport to a new audience. And that was, at that time, we drastically needed more people watching, and he helped bring it to MTV, which was huge. It's hilarious. It is. I sometimes still get people that recognize me, and they'll be like, from Bully Beatdown. I'm like, of all things you can know me from is Bully Beatdown. But hey, you know what? It means they know me from somewhere.
So what happened on that? Because now that you bring that up, I think my thought. Did you watch that show, Gary? By the way,
so I've only caught maybe 1 or 2 episodes of it.
You're not missing
much.
much.
I do remember.
Well, you're not missing much because it's trash TV. But on the other hand, like I don't know how much it did for the sport, but it was amazing. Like one time when the bullies actually kind of won, or did, you know what I mean, like not, you know what I mean, like it was kind of
finished or something. He didn't win, but I think he didn't get knocked out or something.
Yeah,
almost always get finished in the round.
Yeah, or maybe like wobbled the guy's knees, or you know what I mean, like every now. I mean, it's a fight, right? That things could happen. Yeah. And, but it was entertaining. I like trash TV. It was entertaining. I almost wish they could bring it back in a different level or something. Just
not a bad idea.
Yeah. So when you were on it, so how did you get on it? If you were not friends, like was Mayhem like in charge of that or not?
No, he wasn't in charge of it. There's a producer, they handled that. So he was just hired as the host. So he had nothing to do with booking the fighters or anything. Because everyone's always asking that, well, how'd you get on if you guys didn't like each other? I'm like, yeah, they don't really, he was just the host. So he would host it. I can't remember who got me on there, to be honest, but someone just contacted me and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I was like, sure. So we just go out there, and not we take it serious. Fighters would be out drinking the night before, partying, and then go and beat a few guys up and get paid.
Yeah. Were you nice to the bully, or like would you?
A little bit. I wasn't like trying to like hurt him, but you got to rough them up a little bit. The thing is too, most of these bullies like had a little bit of training. It was mostly guys that were like pretty tough and thought they would do, guys probably train a couple months. They think they're better than they are, and like wrestled a little bit. So these guys think, oh, I can survive 3 minutes with a pro. So you weren't, for the most part, you weren't dealing with like total like scrubs. You had guys had a small amount of training. Yeah,
but you also didn't want to look bad on TV.
Yeah, so you had to make sure you're tapping a bunch of times and knocking them out. So they tell you like, oh, don't hurt the guy, but it's like, well, you got to make sure you're finishing him too.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but there was weird rules, right? Like you couldn't head kick them, right? Because I remember somebody head kicked somebody, and that's how that rule came up. Like nobody knew about it until that time. Like,
yeah, I know. I think they told us. I think that was the rule, no head kicks. So I think they probably tell us the rules. They probably just didn't tell the TV. But yeah, I think it was like no head kicks, obviously no elbows, no knees. Can't remember the exact rules, but it was patted down a little bit, kind of more like amateur fighting.
Yeah. So you just wanted.
I think they put a headgear on the bully, but not us, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so I think that's how they did it. So.
Gary, you missed out. This is some amazing TV.
I'll have to go back and watch. I was a little bit busy watching Kimbo Slice. I was still watching that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, another legend, right? Like I probably didn't like him at one point in my life, and now I feel bad for not liking him.
I feel the same way. Look, maybe at the time I was a little jealous because he was getting so much hype. I'm like, this guy's not that good. I was on the same show. They're making him like the poster of it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of lame. But again, he was always a really nice guy. When I saw him, he did a lot for pushing the sport, and he helped make it bigger. It's always sometimes weird things catch with the public for whatever reason. Kimbo caught with the public. So even though me being a fighter, I wasn't really that interested in him, but he brought a lot of new eyeballs. And I was fighting on, I think I was like the co-main on some of those cards, and there would be like 7-8 million people watching. It was like massive numbers. So, or at least I don't know exact numbers, but I know they were like beating the UFCs because they were like on CBS and stuff.
Yeah, and the fact that he humbled himself, meaning that he was already a star, and then he went on The Ultimate Fighter, and that took a lot of balls and a lot of character, and he didn't do well, right? And it didn't matter, right? Like actually, that's what made me a fan of him, that he went on there and humbled himself, and just took his lumps, and to me that made him a real like I guess I connected with. I went from like a hater to because the same thing. I'm like, no, these guys like yourself. I'm like, these guys train and they deserve the credit, and this guy's getting it all. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey man, that guy's cool. Like he's a nice guy.
Yeah, like I said, I might have been a little bit like, oh, it's not fair thinking back at the time, but looking back, he was a nice guy. He had the eyeballs for whatever reasons. He always treated me with respect. It's unfortunate. I think he passed from a heart attack or some issue not too long ago, but he was anyone that helps move the sport is a good thing.
Yeah.
Unless they're a prick, but I said he wasn't a prick. He was generally a nice guy.
Yeah. So he just hung out with weirdos, right? He was with the porn crew or something, right?
Actually, I actually know the guy that ran that porn company. Super nice guy too. I mean, his business is a little bit questionable, but I actually met that guy who Icy Mike. He helps because he's involved with high rollers. He's actually a super nice guy. you would never know he was like, he doesn't come off as a sleazy porn guy like you would think. He would never, he's just like a normal dude dressed in t-shirts like us. You would never know he's like, I assume he's wealthy. He's like super wealthy like that. And like, he doesn't come across all sleazy. He's a super nice, normal guy. So he's the one that I think got Kimbo in the sport.
That's kind of like the double-edged sword. Even that, like we're saying, these people are sleazy, but like everybody watches porn at some point.
Exactly.
Right? I know.
Exactly.
So really,
maybe some bad things about the industry, but he's just involved in the industry that was there anyways. You know, so what are you gonna say? It's got to be done regardless.
Yeah,
so
and
he can do it in the least sleazy way possible, I guess.
Yeah. All right, sorry, Gary.
Oh, no. That's okay. I love talking about porn.
Back to good subject.
There you go.
I was thinking about just sitting here thinking about Strikeforce and WEC, and like for me, like as much as I enjoyed the Pride days and watching the Shudo and the Pancrase, like I loved all that stuff. But for me, that was when I was able to get a lot of my friends interested in it and turn my friends on to Jiu Jitsu and MMA. It was all of those Strikeforce cards. Those and I don't want to say fortunately, unfortunately, whatever, but some of that was Kimbo pushed. People watching that kind of stuff. I always worry about the Logan Paul effect and something taking it that away, because, and I don't want I think because that's what kind of got me hooked into jiu-jitsu and the Hoist Gracie stuff and how pure it was. And I still think there's a lot of purity in it, but like the Logan Paul stuff, as much as I want to watch it, it bothers me because I think it detracts from what I grew up with boxing, because I was a Tuesday night fight, Friday night fight guy. I was watching, Julio Cesar Chavez and Vinny Pazienza, and that was what I grew up on in boxing. The WEC days was kind of where like I was able to bring my friends along into MMA, and I've got a lot of friendships that are still there because of that time. And I don't want to get too cartoonish. It started to get that way a little bit in the UFC when it almost felt like they had heels and good guys, and like, nothing bad about Tank Abbott, but he always came off as like the heel, and it felt like that was kind of what they were pushing. And I don't want to see it questioned as to its validity as a sport, I think, is the thing that I'm always worried about.
Yeah, I think the UFC has done a pretty good job of not signing too many of these guys. Like they didn't sign Kimbo right away. They don't, they signed that pro wrestler, I think, pretty quick. But overall, they've done a pretty good job of not signing a bunch of random people. Not that I'm fully against that. Pride had some of those like ridiculous matches that I would still enjoy. But no, UFC has done a really good job of being like, hey, it's only for really good pros. You only fight tough people. So that's, I have mixed feelings about Dana. That's something that I can definitely give him some credit for, keeping the UFC, not just signing someone because they're famous and giving them cans. So they make they might give you a couple cans, but they're not going to do that for very long, and like Strikeforce and stuff would. But, Strikeforce is great too. I think my three favorite shows of all time would be Pride, UFC, and Strikeforce. Those are like I'm biased for the Strikeforce because I fought there for quite a while, fought in UFC too, and never Pride. But in my opinion, those are like probably the three greatest shows.
Since you fought in both, like, do you miss Strikeforce in a way? Like, and I don't mean anti any other organization, but that's where Miesha Tate came from, like all that Ronda Rousey, like maybe they don't get as much credit either. Like Scott Coker did a great job, bringing that about, and he does a great job now, but that was a big deal. Like, it was a really big deal, right?
Yeah, Luke Rockwell, Gilbert Melendez, Doom fought Fedor over there. It was like really some hype for a minute, because having that's where I'd fought in all these other shows, but when I started getting pretty famous was with Strikeforce days. They were really pushing it when I was a Strikeforce. That's where I fought Dan Henderson, Mayhem Miller. They were putting on big fights that were started to be a real threat to the UFC. They had a lot of hype. They'd sell out these massive shows. It was a ton of fun. It was almost like it was more fun being over there at Strikeforce. But I wish Strikeforce was still around. I would prefer if it was Strikeforce to the Bellator. Scott Coker runs Bellator, but for whatever reason, I just feel like it's never quite caught the way Strikeforce did. Maybe that's a personal bias because I was in Strikeforce, but I feel like I don't feel like it ever got the same hype Strikeforce did.
I feel the same way. I feel like it's just kind of bubbling under what Strikeforce was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was the atmosphere there? Like, obviously you said it was like, can you explain that? Like, was it you know,
I just feel like the
I
energy
don't
for some
know.
reason was just really good in
Yeah.
Strike Force. I mean, obviously a different perspective because I was coming in, winning their title right away, but it just felt like a ton of momentum. You know, they would sell out shows. We'd just get mob warrior going. And the UFC gets that too, but I feel like they're a little more like so serious and strict. You know, the UFC, it's like there's nothing wrong with that. They're a big organization, but it seemed like it was just more fun at the Strike Force events.
Now, were most of those shows in California?
They were all over, but they do a lot in San Jose, California. But they were they were hopping all around. We were fighting Chicago for them, like all over the place. They were starting to go on the road like UFC was.
Yeah, I kind of remember too when they signed Kung Lee, right? Being in San Jose.
Oh yeah,
was
Kong Lee was another massive guy because he was a San Jose guy. He was a big kickboxing star there before, and also a huge Vietnamese population in San Jose. And him being, you know, such a jacked Vietnamese dude, and he does all those flashy kicks. He was a big superstar out there.
What was your thoughts on the Cesar Gracie like Frank Shamrock fight or those things? Because you know it's weird, like he don't really fight, and he came out of retirement.
No, Cesar didn't train at all for that fight. I don't know why the hell he did that. That was just like stupid. It was short-sighted to make well, maybe look like a good payday, but I don't think it was that much money. I mean, I don't know why he had the balls to go out there and fight. It was his decision. So I can't knock him, but he didn't train at all. I mean, we were getting mad at him because he was not training. And then he would like tell me, oh, I went and train with Nick. I called Nick and be like, no, he told me to train with you. I'm like, this fucker. But you know, it's his thing. He had the balls to go out and do it. And luckily he didn't get hurt. It's a strange guy for first one to fight. You know, luckily Nick Diaz went out there and avenged him and completely dominated him.
That's what I was gonna say, because I mean 100% it ended badly for Frank afterwards, right? But like, that was a thing. But even that was good for Strike Force, though. I mean, a lot of people tuned in. Like if you knew the Gracie name, like that was me because I was training under Hoist, and I was like, well, I want to watch this. I watched the Gracie family, and then I was like, well, shit.
Yeah,
you know, like,
it wasn't a fight
also,
that took, in my opinion, but it's, you know, it's his life. I think he got, paid decent, but not worth it to go out there. If you're not gonna take it seriously and go and fight, I don't think you should do it, in my opinion.
was he fighting for honor, or is he just fighting? Like, what do you think? I
think he wanted the payday because he was hardly training at that time. He trained with us more earlier in his career, but by the time he signed that fight, he wasn't really training anymore. Like early on, he would train with us quite a bit, and he's actually, you know, obviously he's talented. But for whatever reason, he wasn't really focused on training anymore. He was doing other things. And then he signs the fight and acts like it's a camp. And he just never did a camp.
Really? Now, is this true? And maybe Gary, you might know too. I thought, and I could be wrong, I thought Frank Shamrock kind of started Strike Force before it was Strike Force. Like it was on Madison Square TV, on like Direct TV. It was like a smaller thing. But I could be wrong.
Shamrock, I think he had some ties to Scott Coker. He definitely didn't start Strike Force, but he may have. Scott Coker probably did things with him because Frank was in San Jose, was also where Strike Force headquarters were. So Frank was really big in San Jose. So I'm assuming he was doing stuff with him. So that's probably what you're remembering.
Yeah, and Frank's another guy that's kind of forgotten, right? Like it's, you know, another
it's crazy guy, mega stars at the time, and how fast things change and people are forgotten.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's also cool to hear all these names, and I think of all the evolution that everything's went through, and especially that division that he was in with him and Tito and Chuck and all those guys, where they kind of went back and forth.
But look at these fights though. Like, so we're talking about Strike Force, you know, Nick Diaz versus Frank Shamrock. Like how cool is that? Fedor and Redoom, like, and you know, the Kung Lee and Shamrock. These are just like mega fights. It's like, you know,
amazing. Yeah,
new people might not hear those names and not know who they are, but at the time, these were like it was the old, like Frank Shamrock was the old generation megastar versus Nick Diaz, the new up and coming star, and you know, just they put on some massive fights.
So when Nick Diaz, did he fight Gomi in Strike Force, or who did he fight in Strike Force?
He fought Gomi in Pride.
Pride, okay.
Yeah.
That's the one where he Gogo plotted him, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Gogo plotted.
Nick, I know he had a good amount of fights in Strike Force. I mean, the Shamrock one was in Strike Force. I can't remember who all he fought there, to be honest, but I know he had a good amount of fights there. KJ Noons, he fought there. Oh, Paul Daly. That may be the best 1-round fight of all time. Nick Diaz versus Paul Daly.
Yeah.
Anyone that hasn't watched that should go watch this fight.
Well, KJ Noons too. Like my biggest thing about KJ Noons, he was probably, people forget about him too, but I always thought if he had shorter hair, he would win more fights because he was like playing with his hair the whole time.
That's right. He was always doing that.
He was always getting punched in the face. I'm like, cut your hair, buddy. But yeah, like all those guys were like, yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Like the more and more we talk about it, like they were the show. Maybe they
Yeah.
don't get the credit now, but they brought some amazing people. Like eventually the UFC signed all these people, right? Like, and yourself included, right? Like they took them all, but there was something more fun about the Strike Force days than the UFC days. Like it was just something different, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I definitely feel like that was a fun time period. I think a lot of the fans do as well, because I feel fans are always bringing up Strike Force things. You know, that's that big brawl took place. There was just lots of fun moments. I'm certainly not saying it was better than the UFC, but it started to be a real contender, and that's why they bought it. They don't want a real contender. That's why they bought it, to kill it. Same thing with Pride. Like it was Pride and UFC. It was like they were real contenders. It wasn't like a feeder league, and that's what Strike Force started being, a contender, not just a feeder league, and that's when they bought it.
Yeah, and it was weird, right? Because then they quit buying stuff altogether, right? Because it didn't work out. Like I didn't think if they brought Pride, they thought they had everybody's contract, but then it didn't really work out.
I think they bought it more to kill the competition, to be honest. I don't know for sure that's what happened, but I feel like they wanted to kind of kill out the competition. No, if we're about bidding wars and stuff.
Well, and talking about having I would like to see a 1A, 1B rather than a 1 and a 2 as far as promotions, because like when Chandler came over to the UFC, and I don't whoever's favorite fighters or anything like that, but I really wanted to see him get into a championship match and make it at least a competitive championship match. That way you can say, listen, there is more talent out there, and the UFC isn't the only place that you're going to find it. And we all know guys that are up and comers that are trying to fight their way to the UFC, but it would be nice to see if Bellator could sink its hooks into a little bit of that and say, listen, our champions are great champions. I remember, and you guys do too, back when it was like, who's better, Pride or UFC?
Exactly.
And that made you want to watch them both.
Yep.
You didn't. If you weren't watching both, you were misinformed, and you were going to get laughed at in a real MMA community because you didn't know what you're talking about if all you was watching is UFC.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think Strikeforce started having that then too. People started being like, "But who would win between the UFC and Strikeforce champs?" And multiple people from Strikeforce came over and became UFC champs. So it showed it was real competition. And no one really talks about that with Bellator. Doesn't mean the Bellator champs couldn't go in and like fight the UFC champs, but there's never people being like, "Oh, who would win if they had the UFC versus Bellator?" And hopefully it'll get there one day. That's when the sport's growing, when people start being like, "Oh, what would happen if they did this card versus that card?" That's when they start being real competition.
Right. And the other thing too is like, and nothing against the guys that are fighting in Bellator, but they leave the UFC and go to Bellator, and then everybody looks at them as like, this is your retirement camp. That's where you're going. Like, I don't want it to be a place for guys to be put out the pasture, And I love Ryan Bader, and I always thought he was an amazing fighter. I thought he had everything he needed to be a UFC champion. For whatever reason, it didn't hit for him. I think a big part of that is John Jones was in his way, but he was an amazing fighter. But then he goes to Bellator, and the community almost kind of forgot about him. Like, he kind of went over there, and he became a champion in 2 divisions, and nobody cared, and that bugged me.
Yeah, no, it's. I don't know why, because Scott Coker's running it. They pay really well. I'm not quite sure why Bellator hasn't quite caught. And I'm guilty of it myself. I don't really watch Bellator that much, so it's like for some reason they just haven't been able to quite build that same excitement. And hopefully Scott Coker will be able to figure it out. He's a smart guy, And I have some guys I'm training, in Bellator. I got a really talented 135 pounder. I'm cut out for a second. But yeah, I have a really talented 135 pounder I'm training, Patchy Mix. I think he's like 15-1. He fought for the title, almost won that. The guy is extremely good, but he hasn't really got much hype either. And it sucks when you have someone that talented you're training, fighting for titles and stuff, and he's just not near as well known as the UFC guys.
So do you have a gym now? Excuse my ignorance. Is it?
No, I know. I've just been training guys out of Extreme Couture here in Vegas. So we go to the UFCPI and stuff too when I'm training the UFC guys. So it's having no gym's a lot of work. I was thinking about opening a gym, but I'm like, that's a lot of work. And luckily I'm in a situation where I have a lot of other stuff going on right now too. So don't, maybe I'll do a gym at some point, but not at the moment.
Well, how does that work? Like, I know a bunch of people that have trained there, and even hobbyists too. Like, it's funny because I think I have a friend that he's a black belt at my gym. He's good. I'm almost positive. I think Randy Couture charges like $1,000 an hour for a private, which means he just doesn't want to do them. Is how I take that.
But he'll probably find some guys that'll do them. Is the crazy part, because
he's one of them.
I make my ring fight too, and every now and again someone will want to do them. So
Yeah. And Gary and I were talking about, and like, I'm not at those rates, but I make mine like 75, 100 because I don't have time to do it. Right.
Yeah,
It's
because it's a lot of
not,
work.
yeah. And it's not the 1,000 that you guys are probably charging or whatever. I know Randy's was 1,000 because my friend took it and I was like, you just took a private for 1,000? He was like, yeah. I was like, well, I hope it was good, man. Like, but he's also a doctor. He's got money.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's generally when guys do that, it's like really wealthy guys. Cause like I have guys that are I know the guys that I'm serious that are training and they train a lot, I'll give them much better rates. But for someone I don't know, randomly, I make it like really high. So if really rich guys just want to randomly train with me, I'll still do it. But it's like, but usually it's them. They're just like fans. They want to roll a little bit. They just making so much money they don't care.
But let's be honest, like that's a good move for you. Like it's a little weird when I'm doing it because nobody knows how I'm doing it, but I just don't want to do it because I've got stuff to do. But like it's a good move because you could have a bunch of weirdos like just want you to touch them. Right?
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and you're stuck in this awkward situation for an hour, or
I had that happen like once where some dude, you're like in the private, you realize how weird he is. You're like, what is this guy doing? Like a fanboy, a little too weird. I'm like, we gotta end this private.
Well, I'll mention his name. I don't know if you know him. Do you know who Tim Lajic is by chance? Okay. Yeah. He's I would say my good friend, but I haven't talked to him for years, but he was in the early UFCs, like UFC 19 for sure. And fought like some guy named Waterman. Do you remember those fights?
Yeah, no, I remember all these old school guys. I was watching way back in the day. So I know all these guys.
Yeah. And he was telling me, he's got some funny stories, but, yeah, and he was telling me one time, like I forget how it works, but let's say he answered an ad, but some guy wanted to spar, and so he was like, he took a private with a guy, and the guy's like, hey, I want to spar, like stand up, and so he was like hitting the guy to the body, boom, and Tim Lajic used to fight, like he was a Golden Gloves boxer. I think he was an Olympic alternate, but he's also like a good wrestler. He's good at pretty much everything. He's a good guy. But anyway, he was like hitting the guy hard to the stomach. He was trying not to hurt him, but the guy was like making weird noise, like, oh yeah, like weird stuff, But that was the guy's kink. Like he was a little gay, and
you wanted to get hit in the
and he wanted to get
people out there
hit by like a big guy, like a big bear, like a whatever. But like
it's a weird fetish.
Exactly, and that's what he was like, dude, what's wrong with you? And the guy's like, yeah. I'm not hitting the story exactly right, but it's really funny when he says, but he was like, yeah, the guy was like, oh, hit me harder, like weird,
yeah, that's fucking weird. I'd be like, I just private over. Yeah, I've heard stories like this with girls that are like world champions or fighters. It's very unfortunate. They have to be a lot more careful with that because some guy can start creeping on them. And I guess that unfortunately happens sometimes.
That's a good, actually, until you mentioned, that's a good point, because I imagine, like, for example, in my gym, in my not that my sons are creepy, he's 14, but they're in love with Misha Tate. So I can imagine those guys taking a private from these guys.
And Misha Tate's a little
yes, exactly.
One with her, you're like
yes, it would not be so good, man. That would be that'd be a whole nother world that I never thought about. But anyway, yeah, look, hey, I know you're short on time, and I've loved this stuff. Let me ask you a couple quick questions, and Gary will finish a couple of quick questions too. But what is, and this maybe help you, but what's I'm looking at your t-shirt that says Jars Cannabis.
Oh yeah.
So is that a sponsor of yours, or what?
Yeah, it's one of my sponsors, and I've been minorly involved in the cannabis industry for years, from being from Northern California. So it's good way to keep making money when I'm not fighting. So yeah, it was one of my sponsors.
So what do they, so let me preface this by saying West Virginia has medical marijuana legal, but they've been arguing for the last 2 or 3 years on who's going to get the money. So like zeros happen here in our state. It will eventually. Yeah. We're always like about 5 years behind everybody else. But so what does Jars Cannabis offer? And how can they get in touch with you so that they know that you're a sponsor, and how does that work?
I think Jars is, they hit me up through, I contacted them through High Rollers. You're at High Rollers, or that, there's this tournament here in Vegas where we basically get high and they compete against each other. And I went against Diego Sanchez there and another guy, so it's pretty funny. So I met Jars through there. And I think Jars, they're mostly, I think, in Arizona. I don't know if they have clubs outside of Arizona, so it's just legal only. You could buy there. So, but they've sponsored me. I think they're a pretty big. There's good money when you have cannabis industry going well. So when it's hitting, especially in certain states. In California, it's difficult because it's so heavily taxed and regulated. So they've made it like difficult to make money because, being involved in California for a while, it's gotten actually a lot harder to make money in the industry because they have so much tax and regulation on it now. So a lot of people are just going back to buying it on the black market.
Which is crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because they give you like you're paying like 100% tax on it. It's like it's absurd.
Yeah, I think one of my good friends, which I'm sure you know, is Stefan Bonner. Obviously one of the and I think he's sponsored by Hitiva. I don't know, but another cannabis company. But same thing. Like it's tough, man. There's so many. And for us, I don't, Gary's in North Carolina now, but it's difficult. Like us on this side of the United States, we're trying to catch up with everybody else, right? Like, and it's funny because look, I was one of the guys on the other side where I was like, weed is stupid, because I listened to all the hype in the media, but I fully accept drinking and being an alcoholic and starting to fight when you drink, and
which is clearly the worst of the two.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't until like the Joe Rogan podcast when they were like putting that together. I'm like, look, everybody's fine with drinking and starting fights and being an asshole, and you're fine with that. Why are you not okay with somebody smoking weed and just sitting on the couch and playing video games? I'm like,
and I think weed is like, you have to be careful too. I don't think it's not something that has no negative effects for everybody. I think some people can smoke and be fine, but other people need to watch it. They might make them lazy, or some people it can like mess with their head a little bit. I've known a few people, they start smoking heavily and they start weirding them out a little bit. So it's there does need to be a little regulation. I think the problem is now that it's getting legal, they're selling edibles and they're not putting any like, people don't know edibles are so much stronger, and they don't know that, and they're just taking them. There needs to be like maybe more of a serious warning on edibles, or maybe the edibles shouldn't be legal, because I've seen so many people just I personally know about 10 people who've gone to the emergency room because they've eaten edibles and had a panic attack. They were totally fine, but they felt like they were going to die because it's so much stronger than they expected.
A lot of people have talked about guns and having to have a gun class before you buy a gun. Maybe you should have an edible class before having edibles.
Exactly, because guys are walking in these clubs, they're selling these like candies, and they're just like, oh, that looks good, and you're supposed to eat like one, but they taste so good they'll eat like 6 or 7 of them. Next thing they know, they're like kind of comatose. So
yes, so and I think most of it, I don't know if you have, but maybe Gary, you have that video where those cops ate those pop brownies and they were like and they called the ER and about that time has stopped, right? Like I think that's how most people are, right? They don't understand, like, look, you got about 2 hours you got to get through. Just calm down.
Yeah.
It's gonna be horrible for 2 hours.
But just relax. Yeah. And I've eaten too much edibles before, not a lot, but I've eaten them like, oh man, I fucked up. But then I've gone in my room, pulled the blanket over my head and be like, I just not turning my phone off. Hopefully no one calls me. Anything I have planned I'm supposed to do, I'm not doing.
Yeah. Those stories with like Joey Diaz and Joe Rogan, they're hilarious, right? On the airplanes when they, like Joey Diaz taking a shirt off an airplane and freaking out.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I didn't hear those stories, but I would not do that on an airplane. I had a friend do that. We were flying to the last Abu Dhabi, and I was somewhere like not Norway, it's one of those Scandinavian, Finland. And the guy asked me if I want to do an edible. I'm like, nah, I don't do it in a plane. And sometimes I might get too high. An hour later, my seat was empty. He comes back. He's like, "Can I sit with you?" And he just sits down. He's like, "I'm just too high." He's like freaking out. But luckily, I calmed him down. Then he fell asleep. I'm like, "Oh, this poor guy's about to have a panic attack on an airplane. This ain't good."
Yeah. Well, speaking, like, not to get off subject too, but it made me think. What did you think of Abu Dhabi? Like when you went, did you love it? Did you like it? Or
I never went to. Actually, I've been to Abu Dhabi, but not for the when I competed in Abu Dhabi, it wasn't in Abu Dhabi because it's like a rotating tournament. But yeah, no, Abu Dhabi was really cool. I mean, the Sheik brought me out there and to train him for a week one time, and it was phenomenal. Great hospitality, good food. It was beautiful. Not a lot going on. Abu Dhabi's the more conservative than Dubai. It's like a 45-minute drive. I think we went to Dubai a couple of times. If you want nightlife, you have to go to Dubai. But Abu Dhabi is a beautiful place, super nice people, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, what it was, I think Jeff Monson was telling me about it, like that he made more money like in these, I don't know what you call them, like underground grappling. Like let's say you compete in Abu Dhabi, but then you would go back to like the Sheik's house, and I could be remembering this incorrectly, but you go back to his house and he would say, "Hey, I want you to roll with this guy, and I'll give you."
Hopefully they were closed.
Yeah,
I know some models do this stuff. I never heard about grappling.
Yeah, no, exactly. You have the exact same thought process that I have.
I would just be like, nah, bro, I'm out on that.
Yes, I'm like, I'm good. I'm perfectly fine. This is how it all starts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Two guys rolling.
A lot of those models, a lot of those influencer models, they fly out there for trips.
Yes. Those guys got too much money, man. They got
too much
going on. Well, so that answer. So Well, Gary, go ahead if you want to ask something. I was going to ask a question, but I'll let Gary because I feel like I keep cutting him off.
No, you're not gonna be. All of it is interesting to me. I actually have a question. How is it that you come off so warm and personable in conversations? Are the Diaz brothers really as like they come off kind of like, I'm not talking to you, I'm here to? Are they like that back at home?
No, bro, the Diaz brothers are like the nicest guys. They're so friendly and stuff too. People are always like so surprised when you know they'll show up and they'll just be like, I didn't think Nick or Nate would be so nice and friendly. I'm like, yeah, as long as they like you and you don't approach them in a disrespectful manner, they're extremely friendly, extremely nice. It's just when they're fighting someone, they look at it like you're the enemy. Or if you disrespect them, you know, if someone comes up in a dick on the street, they might smack them too. But if you come up here friendly, they're going to be like, they're some of the nicest guys. People are always extremely surprised. And Nick and Nate are both really famous, but Nate's almost crossed to the point where it's just like nonstop, just barrage of people just coming up. Like even when he visited me in New York, like people usually leave famous people alone in New York, and it's just nonstop. Like his level of celebrity, it's insane. And he handles it like so well. He's just so like chill, grabs pictures, just like kind of, you know, can't obviously be super friendly to every single person because it's just nonstop. But I'm so surprised. Like there's times where I want to be like, oh, push people off. I'm like, oh, Nate seems to be handling it fine. It's he's actually super chill as long as you're chill back to him.
That's a good question too for both of you, because I remember when a long time ago, let's say 5-10 years ago, but I had Vanderlei in for a seminar, and the same guy, much like you're involved with, he was just setting up the seminars, right?
Yeah.
And his name was Rob, and he was like, hey, you know, I know the Diaz, but he knew the Diaz brothers, but he always warned me. He's like, do not grab them because they might not show up. I don't know if that was good or not, but I think it also like fit into whenever I think it was Nick that wasn't showing up some press conferences for GSP, right? So I always wondered if that was like a true thing or not, because I was like, well, fuck yeah, I would love either one of them. And then he was like, don't do it, man. And this was the guy that was setting up the seminars. He was like,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They usually show. I know they've done a couple. I know Nick's missed a few things. Nate, I think it's rare. It is hard because I think people want me to be like, oh, can you book Nick or Nate? And I'm always like skeptical because I would hate to get Nick and have him not show. Because unfortunately, he has done that a few times, but he's gotten better. And Nate's pretty good. He doesn't miss. I think he kind of gets lumped in because the brother, you know, the 2-for-1, kind of like same thing with smoking. Nate smokes a little bit, but everyone assumes he's like always smoking because Nick is, but he's kind of smokes way less. I think he's usually a little more on time.
Well, I was hoping you would dispel that rumor, but it's okay.
Yeah. They do great seminars if they're there. Like Nick will usually he's there. But he'll show up like an hour late sometimes. He does that part. But he'll stay the whole time, and often he'll stay an extra hour or two just answering questions, showing people stuff. He's extremely good teacher, and you know he'll spend the extra time. He's never like in a rush out. Getting there on time is a different story, but
yeah. Well, there's still an option. It's fine because look, in my opinion, you know, not that you're better than them or they're better than you. Like you guys are all awesome, right? Like we are thankful and lucky in our little state of West Virginia that you're coming on January 16th, right?
Yep.
And everybody is coming from out of. I got people coming from Ohio,
awesome.
North Carolina, Virginia. They're all coming. Look, and that's the other thing, and that's speaking back to when Vanderlei came. I think, and that's what his manager. It wasn't his exact manager, but his manager for the seminar.
Yeah, the guy that was booking the seminars.
Yeah, he was like, I don't think people are used to seeing famous people in West Virginia, and the reason he said that was because so many people showed up and everybody was excited. And nobody was weird. Now I will tell you this. It was kind of funny because Vanderlei obviously is more like stand-up kind of, you know, like
more stand-up seminar.
Yeah. So he did like at the end of the seminar, he sparred with everybody really light, which was the goal. But then this kid like went with him
tried going hard.
Yeah. And so then Vanderlei like he flipped and then attacked the kid. And then so the video it went viral. I didn't tape it, somebody was taping it, went viral. It ended up on Mike Chavallo, The Voice on Access TV. He was like, hey, let me tell you about, so what was up with beating this kid up in West Virginia? Like,
yeah, right. No, he deserved it.
Yeah, so it went crazy and it was fun. And then, but honestly, it fucked Vanderlei up for the rest of his life because now if he does seminars, he doesn't spar with anybody. So it actually
he doesn't want it to happen again. Yeah, see, that sucks. Yeah, for the most part, people are cool. Every now and again, you run into a douchebag like that. It's just unfortunate with everything in life. In jiu-jitsu, though, luckily, the vast majority of people are pretty cool. And it's, you can train hard in jiu-jitsu without it being as big of a deal. I don't mind if the kids come at me hard.
Yeah, and that's the difference. Yeah, with some kid, he did a spinning back kick to his stomach, and then a second time he hit it, Vanderlei just broke loose. And
yeah, it's different sparring. If someone does something to sparring like that, you kind of got to kick their ass.
yeah, and it I'll tell you what, it was a legendary story, and it was fun. But now we do jiu-jitsu somewhere, so we'll change it, and we have a legend like yourself coming in. And in preparation for you coming, I've been watching some of your videos, your seminar videos from like New York and stuff. In the videos I saw, you did a lot of front headlock and guillotine stuff. Is that kind of like your go-to, or does it matter?
Yeah, I teach different stuff. I kind of show up, talk to the guys, see what they feel like working. I kind of see what level they're at, see if they're more into MMA versus jiu-jitsu, and kind of gauge the seminar. And sometimes there might be current stuff I'm working on that I'm really happy with. I think it's new. Sometimes I can show stuff that I know is always good but works. So I kind of just depends.
Yeah. And so if somebody's asking me, what can I expect at this seminar?
Well, my seminars are generally grappling based, whether it's MMA or jiu-jitsu, because that's my specialty. I know some stand-up. I figure no reason maybe teaching stand-up. I'm better at ground. So it's it depends on, is it more of a jiu-jitsu based or more MMA based, you think, coming?
Yeah.
Because I'll probably do most. Yeah, is it more? Well, it depends if it's more MMA or jiu-jitsu people. So I'll probably do most of the jiu-jitsu stuff. But if there's a lot of MMA people, we could do like striking drills. We could do takedowns off the cage, just depending on how the crowd is. If it's pure jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't do that because no reason.
Yeah, and here's the thing about, since you and I haven't talked a bunch, well, zero until today. So we have like gi jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah,
we have no gi jiu-jitsu, we have MMA, but I would say that the focus would be gi and no gi.
Yeah, no gi is generally my big focus. So I generally do the seminars no gi. I can do a little gi stuff, but I just prefer the gis. And like a lot of the stuff, anything I do is usually can transfer between the gi pretty easy. So
yeah. And what was the stuff that I'm seeing? Do you feel like your front headlock or guillotine stuff is above and beyond? Is that why you were teaching them, or did I?
I think I have a great guillotine, and I've tapped a bunch of guys with that. Guys like Robbie Lawler, like good legit guys. I think one of my best moves, and I mean, so it's definitely something I teach. But there's lots of other things I'm comfortable teaching as well. So,
well, that was your DVD too on BJ Fanatics, right? Where you had
I did one. Yeah, I did one on guillotines and one on guard passing, I think. But we could do back stuff, mount. I kind of fill out the crowd and see what they feel like working, and find out what level there are. And then I generally, all levels, but I generally try to push a little more towards the advanced people, because I figure the advanced people could always learn stuff and come back and reteach it to the beginners. So it'd make more sense to push like slightly more advanced. But you also got to, if the whole crowd's beginner, then I'll make it a lot more beginner.
What is your guard passing style?
I do cover like the pressure passing, low passing mostly. So I'm a big fan of like not giving space, stay on the knees, and like force to half guard, then pass from there. I do a little standing passes, but not a lot. Watching guys like Gordon Ryan who fuses the two so good between the standing and the low passing, because Gordon Ryan actually uses this very similar low passing style to me, but then he has kind of a standing one that he mixes in. So, I've copied a little of that. But that's usually not stuff that I'm teaching, just kind of, copy and learning off him. But for the most part, I do the knee pressure passing. And I think that's, in my opinion, it's the best passing. It works. You can get to almost anyone's guard. It's good for MMA and jiu-jitsu. And, you look at a lot of top guys use those low passing, like GSP. Gordon Ryan uses a lot of the low passing. Like I said, he fused the system, but he still does a ton of those body lock passing. I think guys like Craig Jones are starting to rotate towards that system now in their new matches. You see him doing a lot of that now.
Lachlan Giles is also the body lock pass.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the guys that we're doing different passes are kind of gravitating towards that when they realize it's really not the most fun thing to drill, but it's getting good body lock passing is extremely important. So I do teach that in a seminar, I usually do that like first, because it's the least fun thing to drill, and then move into more fun stuff.
Well, if I get a vote, I want to do passing, because that's
we
it's kind of the same thing. I want to smash and pass people.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, I always do that earlier because it's the least fun to drill, and then you can go to the more fun submissions.
But right now, I'm sorry, I've been drinking a bunch while we were talking. Is body lock and passing, is is the key right now, right? Like from butterfly guard, from everything.
Mhm.
That's been like crushing it right now. That's the hot thing.
Yeah, no.
Hot thing right now.
Yeah, it's yeah, no, it's how I've been passing for like 20 years, but exactly, I think it's extremely hot right now. Like a lot of these elite guys are trying to learn it and get better, you know, like you said, all these guys that they're doing it because they see how effective it is. When you get good body lock passing, it is hard to stop it. And honestly, when someone passes my guard, it's usually with a good body lock pass because they don't give you any space. They lock it in. You can't, you know what they're doing, but stopping it's hard.
Yeah.
If you do all the steps correct.
Yeah. Well, that's what we need to learn, right? And that's why we're excited to have you down.
Perfect. We can do a little of this. Like I said, I always do that. It's not the most fun thing to do, but we can always do the first like 30, 40 minutes some body lock passing, and then do some fun stuff. It's always fun to tap people. That's what we want to do. But doing the stuff that's not fun is just as important.
Well, that's what I'll put on our description is the first 30, 40 minutes are going to be not fun.
Yeah. So the first half won't be fun. And then we'll do something fun. We'll do like a spinning heel hook or something.
Yeah. We'll just be like normal purple belts and above, just like you skip all warm-ups. You might, skip this part and then do the fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, it's going to be, listen, I personally am super excited. I know Gary is, but like we've been fans and it's been great to talk to you, but like, this is exciting, man. I'm sure you've never been to West Virginia, right?
I have not. No, I've traveled quite a bit, but West Virginia I've not been to. I guess there's no big cities there, like you said, because I was trying to think, usually you're traveling around going to places, but if there's no big city, you don't get sent there. And people probably don't randomly go to vacation in West Virginia.
No, it's terrible. I live here, but
oh, great. I'm canceling. Just kidding.
But I'll tell you what, shoot me a message if because I'm responsible for your plane ticket back.
Okay, yeah, get myself from David and stuff too, so you can always just text me right before and we can work it all out.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like there is some stuff to do, and hopefully, if we got some time, we'll do some cool stuff because there is some kind of fun stuff. The unfortunate thing is it's cold time, which luckily, you've worked in New York a little bit, so it's like to be freezing, but.
That was the first time I experienced cold when I moved to New York. I'm like, what the hell? This is not normal.
Yeah. And it's the unfortunate thing. The good stuff that West Virginia is known for is not right now. It's like whitewater rafting, zip line.
Oh, yeah. That type of stuff's cool. But
yeah.
Oh, well, maybe it'll go good and we'll come out in summer next time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited. I know Gary's excited. He's and that's the other thing. Like, what are you weighing right now?
I'm about 185 or so.
Okay.
So I've managed
to. You and I are both really fat.
Not gain much weight. Yeah, I managed to not put on weight after I was done fighting, like a lot of guys do.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're teaching a seminar to a bunch of fat people, so it'll be great. It'll be one. West Virginia is also #1 in the world for fat people, so you're gonna be.
So a lot of fat people. So I have to adjust my jiu-jitsu. Well, hey, body lock passing works good for that.
It does
for all body types with body locks. Certain moves are good for certain body types. You have to adjust, but body lock passing anyone can do.
Well, I'm totally trashing our state, but next, while you're teaching us seminar, I'll play dueling banjos, from Delivery.
Isn't that where like the whites of West Virginia? I think there was that trashy thing I saw. So
yes, no, it's funny because I'm glad you mentioned it. Like one time, do you remember that movie Driven by Jens Pulver by chance?
I don't think I saw that.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a documentary about him, and he was trying to make a comeback for fighting, but it was really about him getting abused as a child. It's really sad.
Yeah.
And bullied and stuff. So we premiered the movie.
About it, yeah.
Yeah, we premiered in West Virginia. It was like one of the things we did for him. But anyway, when he first got here, that's when that movie was hot, and he was like, "Let's go visit the wonderful whites of West Virginia," which they're all gone now, But
oh yeah, so we can't go visit them, darn.
No, but we can still do the West Virginia mating call. Do you know what that is, Gary?
Yeah, you get a pill bottle and you shake it.
Yeah.
That's right. You guys got big pill problems out there, right? Isn't that one of the areas that's hit hard by that?
Yeah. We've got a lot of stuff going on. This one girl just wrote on me on Instagram. She said there's lots of shrinkage in the cold too, but she is correct.
That's probably true.
It's also probably true. Well, anyway, I'm excited. And I know you don't want to be on here forever. We would have kept you on here forever if you had stayed, but you're awesome. But dude, I'm excited. What about you, Gary? Are you excited for?
I'm pretty ecstatic. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh, man, this would be good.
I've been following you forever, and clear back to the Shudo days, and maybe even a little bit before that. So it's always exciting to meet somebody, and thankful to talk to you today.
Yeah,
Thanks
cool,
for
man.
joining us today.
Yeah, no, it should be a good time. Like I said,
what's the best way if somebody wants to check you out online, Twitter, all that good stuff? How do they
Twitter
find you?
is Jake Shields AJJ, and my Instagram is just Jake Shields. But so who knows what I'll post? All kinds of ridiculous shit. So be warned.
Yeah. Well, as well.
If you're following me, you never know what you're gonna get. Don't be offended easily.
Nah, that's good. Some of the best people to follow are the ones who post the crazy shit. So it's good.
Okay, perfect. I guess most jiu-jitsu people luckily don't give a shit. I'm lucky to be in an industry where I can still say whatever the hell I want without people getting all mad.
Yeah. There's not a lot of soft people in jiu-jitsu.
No, thank God.
It's weeded them mostly out. So
they got choked out literally.
That's not good. Well, we're excited. So at the end of this, I've been running live on Instagram. A lot of pretty girls just got on here, which is
that's a good sign for me. I hope not you guys.
Yeah, and they're excited. They're worried about the shrinkage that we'll have on that day. They keep running that.
Well, hope it's warm on out there.
Yeah, we'll be fine. It'll be warm in the gym, so we'll be fine. But that is January 16th is our thing. I'm putting a price of $75. That should cover everything. It should cover, like I'm not trying to make money off this. I'm trying to cover Jake coming down with his plane ride and his fee and stuff. So I'm hoping to give this an opportunity for everybody to come down and train with, I hate using the word legend, but you are legend. But you're still here. That's why it sucks, right? When you say legend, we think of somebody that's old, but you're still here.
Yeah, still young and in shape, or youngish.
That's kind of what happens when you start fighting as a you were a kid, you started fighting
young. Exactly.
How old were you when you had your first fight?
I think like 20. I had my first pro fight probably. So I fought, I think 19. I think like about 19 years pro, almost at 20. And I'm like, well, I haven't officially retired. I'd maybe hop back in there, but just haven't fought in a couple of years. We'll see.
Right. Well, and that was you and that whole scrap pack. Every one of you guys were just, you were
We all
barely
had
out of high
long
school.
careers. We were active, yeah. And we all had
How
long
old was
careers,
Nick
too.
when he had Nick was like 16?
18, I think. I think
18?
they were just turning. I think we were fighting Nate before he was 18, like an unregulated, like maybe like amateur stuff. But I'm pretty sure we had him do some fights when he wasn't even 18 yet.
Right. That's just wild. And yeah, it seems like you guys have fought forever. You guys should be old, and you're not.
Right. And we're still young and can still fight. But yeah, we've been at it forever. It's weird. We were talking about all the names we were talking about. It's like several generations we've gone through, and that's what's like, man, we're still here. And all of us too. Nick, Nate, Gil, we all still train. Who knows if I'm not sure if Gil's in fight or not anymore, but we all still train regularly and still in shape. So it's pretty cool, like how we all met together and had such long careers.
Yeah. Well, brother, we're so thankful you're coming out, and can't wait, man.
Cool, excited. Man. Yeah, it was great chatting. So I'll see you guys in a month or so, I guess.
Sounds good.
All right, Gary, bring us home, man. I appreciate everything. Jake, by the way, you're the man. It was great learning about some history. So I appreciate your time, really, because we said we'd keep this short, and we did. I mean, it's only been an hour or so, but
yeah. I feel like the talk was good, so I was planning on going quick, but the talk was going good, so I figured no reason to rush it. But
yeah, so we appreciate that too, and thank you for your time, and thank you for coming to West Virginia. Listen, man, I am lucky, and Gary's like, we're all lucky that such a great person like yourself's come to West Virginia to teach us some jiu-jitsu, teach us some great things, and I appreciate you. You'll never know. We'll talk more to that day, but thank you. Like we're all so lucky, and like we're in this little tiny state that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
And we're only know about sleeping with our sisters and brothers and cousins.
Doing matching trailers and
yes, exactly.
It's all right. I grew up around fucked up people too, so that's normal to me.
Yes, it's all perfect. So,
I was like, oh, it feels like home.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and dealing with us. Like, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Cool, man.
Gary, go ahead and bring us home, buddy.
Yeah. So, okay, guys. So the 16th, Jake Shields seminar. It's going to be at Charleston, West Virginia, Butch Hiles Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And yeah, Jake, thanks for joining us, guys. Take care.
Cool, man. Have a good night.
See you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Cool. Thank you, guys.